Good evening, folks. It's Victor Vinciant with another episode of Beyond the Algorithm. And today's topic is, what do men need to protect themselves from the most? So I brought some ideas to the conversation already while you guys think about what I'm saying as I talk. And I made a Facebook post today to try to get this conversation, what I'm saying, some roots about what the audience thinks and what what men care about, and also what I think is important. And one of the things that I identified over time is a lack of respectful communication between men. But I'll wrap what I say into the topics as we go, and identify and dissect them as we make things work for today's chat. So for all you guys that's here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Um, use your follows, use your highlights, use all of that good stuff. So I appreciate you guys chiming in. And before I get started, I'm gonna make sure I say some things that out of support. So shout out to the Untouchable Super Panel, getting a chance to work with those guys, Ilkan Ali and Team Fatty. Shout out to Anton Daniels for giving me a chance to get on the platform recently too. And all the other content creators I've been networking with outside of the platform. You know, the the work and collaboration that goes into trying to make something work is often done beyond the algorithm. That's why I changed the name of the podcast to it, because I want to talk about the things that happen once we leave social media. What happens when we're not on social media? And I've been just paying attention to people's behaviors and how they interact with one another, even when you're just making regular trips to the store, whether you're driving your car or how you observing and processing content that you see online, because it shapes the way that we think, communicate, and react to stuff. And the the algorithm conversation is about the gender war pretty much, and how men and women are not on the same sheet of music, and waking up to pick up their phone just to challenge somebody else's ideas with people that they don't even really respect, know, or care about. And those same people have the same mutual response to them as well. But we want to sit down and let's have an honest conversation about why we are where we are. Like, I talked to a few of my friends offline about where we're going, and what do men hope to get out of women that don't respect them, and how that plays into what they need, well, what men need to protect themselves from is wasting their energy. Wasting your energy on people that don't respect you is a surefire way to shorten your lifespan. I saw a post previously, and I'll probably bring it up later on in the conversation, of this guy who died while heavily engaged in an angry conversation with a woman via text. So imagine the life that you have and all of those obligations and responsibilities that you got, and the people that's depending on you, having to deal with life after you pass away, and they were depending on you, but you stressed yourself out with the wrong person, and you ended up having a heart attack or an aneurysm or some medical emergency that took the best of you out. And we see it in multiple levels, right? You'll see it where people that can't maintain their cool, they get in a situation and then their life is on the line, you know. And you see it when it happens in relationships all the time, mostly in relationships. And And I want to shift, I want to talk about what men need to do to stop engaging in unhealthy competition. Now, like somebody's gonna hear what I just said, and they're gonna say, well, you can't do anything about it, or you can't change that. I don't have to change it for everybody. I'm only identifying it as a point of contention and concern for what I'm doing. So whatever detractive statements that you might have, that might be relative to what you care about. But the things that I care about are rooted in men actually working together, establishing trust. And once we establish trust, guess what we can do? We can make money together. We can support each other. We can build each other's brands. We can do a lot of different things that are positive if we got the right people in the conversation. But unfortunately, we got a lot of talented people that are in the wrong conversations with the wrong people. So I felt like I needed to frame this conversation in a way where men can focus on what's important, because we all use social media, but some of us are consumers and some of us are creators. And this is why I try to encourage men that if they got something that they want to stand on and it's healthy, then they should get behind it with their best effort and tune out the people that don't care. Tune out the people that don't add value to what they're trying to accomplish. So we came up with the idea, because I think last week I posted, I said black men don't have any allies. And some people probably got somewhat offended by it, puzzled by it, confused by it, or whatever. But they chose to interact with the conversation. And the reason I made that post is because when we break down how impactful all of this gender conflict conversation has been, well, who's left? Who's on what side? Everything began with, like the inception, um, inception between the inception of the Kevin Samuels conversation, and then the red pill ideology that got completely energized by his message, and a lot of men started trauma bonding over that, and I started noticing like the behavior of it was becoming no different than how the women were communicating, the women that those men complain about, and like all of these conversations where we got to make caveats saying like, well, it's not all men and it's not all women, but it is to me 1000% of the men and women that fit the behavior. So they have to be isolated and put to the side. Okay. So now that we got that line of demarcation, that's where I talk about being disciplined and undisciplined. Undisciplined people argue with each other. Disciplined people sit and listen. If they don't know anything, they ask healthy questions, and they want community. They want some version of it. And that's not necessarily about living next to each other. This is about like-minded thinking. Like even in my first book, the one that's over my shoulder in the middle, the first book was called The Code, and it's a blueprint to solidarity among reasonable Black people. And the question that I asked in there, to stave off offense, is like, if somebody asks me, do you think I'm unreasonable? Now I'm going to be like, I don't know. Are you? That's a choice. Being reasonable is up to you. But like the disingenuous question about it, the disingenuous part of that question is that so many people are looking for a way to wrap their trauma around your words. So I'm not a therapist. I'm not. I'm just a consultant in a lot of ways. I've done a lot in like in the real estate field. I've written some books. I've been an instructor. I was in the military. I've done a lot of different things, man. And one of the things that I've been able to identify is that you can only deal with people that reflect your level of self-esteem. So if you're in constant conflict with somebody that is determined and already boxed in to disagree with you, then what does that say about you if you keep engaging with that person, you know? And if you got a message that's rooted in truth and righteousness, and it's not selfish, and it accounts for as many variables as possible, then you should be able to tell if the message is coming from a healthy place or not. And what you don't see, in my opinion, is a lot of the guys that are in the red pill space having a conversation that gets men back to square one so they can address the way that they react to stuff. Because everything in the world is gonna it has a chance or potential to trigger you depending on how you attach yourself to it. So you have to figure out, how would I counsel and coach myself if if I was the son and the father at the same time. So because the truth is, we got to reparent each other. We got to reparent ourselves, and so we have to take it, give ourselves advice that we would expect a child to listen to. You know what I'm saying? And of course, you make that advice relative before you get ready to make a decision, and whatever it is that you're doing. You have to decide, what's the outcome. What am I really doing this for? Is it for a short-term fix? Whatever it might be, or is it for a long-term goal? Does this tie into what I'm really purposed to do? So when we bring up these topics about respectful communication, has to be the foundation of it, right? Like some of y'all saw, I went live earlier, and uh somebody might have called a soundbite, and like I don't know if Michael Gann is watching, but he was the one that chimed in, and initially he said it looked like pandering that I was doing, because he only caught part of the conversation. And I've noticed that that's the same type of judgment that keeps us in a loop and derails conversations and stuff, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you establish a level of credibility about what you purpose to do, and you keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it, it eventually weeds out people that are just committed to misunderstanding, you know what I'm saying, a message. They don't want to, they listen to respond. They just want to, they just want their emotions appeased, and they want to tone police you. They want you to say everything perfectly, but they don't have anything to contribute to a solution. And for a solution to really be honest, it has to weigh out the pros and cons. It has to think about the cost effectiveness of the solution. What's the return on investment, and what's the level of commitment that you have to have to your message so other people can believe in it, you know? And sometimes it feels like you might be talking to yourself, you know? And the reality is that that's where it begins. If you can't have a conversation with yourself about making the right choice and deciding who gets the most of your energy and knowing the difference between that block button and not, you're going to live your life from panic to panic, conflict to conflict. And that's not a healthy way to live your life. It's just not. Is You can't base all of your the way you communicate on scarcity, on other people's opinions, and anything like that, because there's variables that we just can't control. Okay. And knowing the difference between the two is part of what men have to do in order to move in a direction that makes sense. So a lot of you guys been arguing with women the last 5 years. And I just really want to focus on what rule number 2 is about, when it comes down to it. And when I say rule number 2, you guys know I'm talking about the book, okay? The book, Accountable Masculinity. And here's the thing, right? You guys are arguing with women that have their own problems. And some of the guys might be watching this and maybe not see it as a big deal, say, oh, it's just the internet. No, it's not. It's not. You can't say on one hand your phone is listening to you, and then when you want to do something that's really childish overall, say it's just the internet. You can't pick and choose. You got to have some accountability about that. You know what I'm saying? Because again, if you believe that men are supposed to be leading society, then like, if you believe men are supposed to be leading society and supposed to be in charge and supposed to be wherever you believe men, fit into the grand scheme of things, why are you arguing with the people with the least amount of resources? Why are you in conflict, intertwined woefully with people that do not reflect your line of thinking? You know, because everybody lives on a spectrum based on their anecdotal experiences and their communal experiences, right? So the way you function outside of social media eventually causes you to look at people different with a different scrutiny, because you have to think about it like, man, you think about the content that you consume, and then you got to look at somebody and say, I wonder what they spend their time watching. Some people might just be hanging out on Pinterest, some on TikTok, some on YouTube. Some people care about education, some people don't. Um, and that's okay too, you know, because everybody has something that they care about, like infinitely, that you can't take from them, right? Well, what I care about is brand promotion, being responsible for our own media, our own narrative, because part of the reason men are where they are, in my opinion, is because we were too quiet for too long. And then on top of that, when we got through all of the rage bait and getting drawn into negative conflicts with the opposite sex, or or whatever conflict you was engaged in, because you got some guys that are pro women and some guys that are anti women. You got some incels out there. You got some. There's a broad spectrum. But what's happening is that the smarter guys, they either being quiet or sometimes getting roped into conversations that mask their intelligence. So if you want to see different outcomes, well, we have to model that from within too. And I'm gonna put this up on the screen right here, so you guys can see what we're discussing, right? Let me pull this banner down. All right. So I asked men, what what do men need to protect themselves from the most, right? Well, let's start with the top one being the police. A lot of men definitely care about the topic of police brutality and everything dealing with social injustice, right? So, um, what are your thoughts in the comments? So y'all start dropping, what I'm saying, what you care about in the comments when it comes down to the police. What do you think the biggest issue with the police is? Because I want to make sure that we package this up the right way, because everybody has a different perception on this. I'll tell you what I think about the police. I think a lot of the issues that we deal with police when it comes down to being black is relative to where you live. The people that live in populated cities, metropolis areas, their dealings with the police is completely different than people that do not live in populated areas. Okay, and I think that that's something that if we want to start, we have to have something that we can agree on, right? So if we can agree on that and moving forward, the next thing is thinking about the cost analysis. If you want to, like, have I say this candidly, if you want to have the safest experience possible in dealing with the police, what do you think has to happen on your end? Now, we know that some police officers that fit the negative behavior that makes this even a topic are going to do what they're going to do no matter what, right? It's up to us to determine how much of that conflict goes in our favor, right? So, number one, we have to make the decision that makes the most sense for safety, getting back home to your kids and all of that good stuff, right? Then we have to also take into consideration that everybody ain't raised right. Everybody ain't raised on the same principles and morals. They don't care about the same things. It's unfortunate, but it's utopia for us to think that everybody's going to have our best interest in mind. And we're always caught up in this word should. The word should is very, very dangerous. And pay attention to this right here. I say all the time, the words we use really cast spells on on our outcomes, because like even in a traditional like say a spell book, when you watch a movie or something that's dealing with witchcraft or anything like that, what do? They pull out the spell book and they have to recite the words and then commit to it and have conviction when they say abracadabra, right? Well, the word should is abracadabra, okay? And everything, meaning that everything you say, everything that happens after you say the word should come into existence. And that is very hit or miss depending on what mindset you're using. If you're thinking from an undisciplined mindset, then you're probably going to end up in a lot of disappointment, because the undisciplined mindset thinks with expectation. The disciplined mindset thinks with experience. So if you've had negative experiences, you're going to say, well, what can I do to make it better the next time around? Especially if you know you might have to deal with a certain type of encounter, anything, because we talk about protection now. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about threats to your personal safety, all of that stuff, right? Well, we have to really, really put ourselves in the blender about this and say, man, if I make this decision, how's it gonna go? Well, what could trigger a negative outcome? What could add fire or fuel to something that my worst concern? And typically, fear is a catalyst for a lot of poor decisions that get made. You know what I'm saying? Fear, um, uncertainty, everything that's associated with that. That is an undisciplined mindset. But like, if you do what you know how to do in the safest manner possible, you start making decisions as if your child is the central point of concern, the safety of your child. That you have to really live your life protecting yourself as an inner child. You know what I'm saying? Of course, you're gonna take some risk here and there, but if you're in a disadvantaged position, you got to really look at, how do I avoid this in the future, right? So we got to be real about these things. And some people don't want to have a conversation because they're going to be like, they're going to either be, they're going to default to certain terminology that says you are not for your own people, when the truth is we really are for our people, right? So we got to be careful about how we deal with police in that regard. That's just the truth. And what comes after that is the propaganda that you see. The propaganda associated with said police brutality and any other issue, because all of this stuff amounts to the narrative of how we function. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you can isolate it or whatever, but when you start breaking down the numbers, and we can get into more detail, the stories are going to vary so greatly because of where the information comes from. You know what I'm saying? And who was doing what. So, and that feeds the propaganda. The propaganda piece is very important. So, shout out to Eddie for bringing that word up as a point of contention. So, like, propaganda is what works against us the most effectively, and the reason it works so effectively is because they take whatever it is, like media that's not in your favor, um, takes a characteristic, not all of the details, just the characteristic, and manufactures a counter narrative for whatever bias benefits the person that's putting it out. And in that bias, you could tell if that person is well-meaning or self-righteous, right? So it's important for us to focus on healthy things, because when we start thinking creatively and we start thinking about producing products and solutions around healthy things, that it brings both the worst case and the best case scenario to the conversation, and people inherently have a choice to make when it comes down to it, you know. So propaganda, we're responsible to some degree about what we do with our behavior and conduct that fuels any negative narratives that comes back against us, especially when we know it doesn't take much to destroy any particular man's credibility, you know. Um, so, and propaganda is information often biased, misleading, or emotionally charged to influence public opinion or behavior towards a particular cause, ideology, or agenda. Okay. So when that definition comes up, right? Let me put this in the chat so you guys can see it. When that definition comes up, what are we doing to fuel it, and what are we doing to counter it? So we got to take that into consideration, right? Stupid decisions falls right in line when you start talking about propaganda. You make a stupid decision, you lose your narrative. The propaganda gets used against you. It gets used to the advantage of the person that cares about the bias. All of these things play off of each other, man. You know, and then we have to figure out what's our equity in solving the problem, in staving off from it, in avoiding it. You know, we have work to do when it comes down to that as men. You know, hey, for all you guys that's watching, hey, leave a one in the chat if I got your attention, man. Just you know what I'm saying, let me know if you're with me or not. So, and if for those of you that want to be a guest on the show, you can see follow the ticker at the bottom of the screen and send an email to internetstepdaddy@gmail.com. And or if you're on Facebook, you can inbox me, whatever, you know, and we can go from there. But stupid decisions fuel the propaganda too. That's what we end up contributing to the issue. You know what I'm saying? That's our responsibility, because the thing that makes you masculine is taking ownership of every decision. You know what I'm saying? Not just having a negative opinion, not even a negative opinion, just having an opinion aimed at the wrong people that don't respect you. You know, part of being masculine is communicating with people that actually respect you and giving respectful communication too. So, like the traditional high value man conversation that was centered on the characteristics of a high value man. I want to talk more about the character. You know what I'm saying? Because the only thing that keeps us from going where we're supposed to go, or be where we're supposed to be, or be as successful as we're supposed to be, is how we react to things and what we internalize and what we wage conflict with each other over. So that's what a taking blame party is. Like, we have to learn how to let the blame go where it needs to go, and part of that has to be only sticking up for the people that respect you. Only the people in your life that respect you deserve that level of reciprocity. You know what I'm saying? Because if you make a mistake and, and you can own up to it, in your mind, you're thinking that somebody else would take your example and integrate that into their expectation. But that's where that word comes in, should. That abracadabra word, it doesn't apply to everybody's moral fiber. They don't see everything at the same time you see it. But respectfully, you got to just cut them off and get in their space so they can learn from it, you know, because you can't teach everybody at the same time either. Okay. Um, I saw my man, I think his name is Eric Day. He he put up there the government. Yep. And notice how all of these things are like building up on top of each other. And thinking about the government, right? And how broad that term is for everybody. You know, there's some people that see a larger play, and there's some things that got to be um they have to be action and tiered steps and stuff, right? So imagine, for instance, if your politicians actually educated you on what they were trying to do and how they were trying to go about it. If they talk to you the way I'm talking to you right now and explain certain processes so you can kind of compartmentalize and put the right pieces of the way you need to think in the right places, not changing how you think, but the way that you go about solving your problem and putting and prioritizing what you can what you can win and what you can't. So the government is a very, very broad topic. when it comes down to it. But if you can't get the stupid decisions out the way, you can't understand propaganda, you can't understand how the machine works against you, then you're going to always be blaming large topics that you can't readily impact, and definitely not with the amount of undisciplined people that lead with disrespect and conflict before they try to compliment you. And I understand and I respect the fact that there's going to always be somebody that's not going to agree with you. You know what I'm saying? That's why you shouldn't play games that you can't win unless you set the rules. And if you got the know-how and the ability, then why are you giving your time to people that only consume? There's a big separation right now in the content creator space where you're going to start seeing more you're going to see consumers, a hard line separation between consumers and creators. So you have to figure out, where do you fit in that conversation? And if you've been on social media over a decade and you are just on here arguing, like, at some point you got to evaluate what's the return on your time and investment and your energy. All right. The exploiting of blind spots goes back to propaganda yet again. So we're not all raised the same way. So all of us gonna have different blind spots. There are gonna be things that we can and cannot see, as what a blind spot actually is. So that's where grace comes in. If you know better and you know grace is necessary, don't expect grace in return. Don't expect grace from people. Don't expect grace from people that compete with you. Okay? People that compete with you are waiting for you to fail. Like, I know I'm a grammar Nazi, right? And I laid the groundwork for that identity a long time ago. A lot of y'all probably remember when I was MC Grammar on Facebook, and what I was doing, I was demonstrating how motivated some people are when you misspell a word. And yeah, I made a mistake or two here and there over the course of 10, 12 years, you know what I'm saying, on social media. But anytime I made an error, it was somebody there to be like, Vic, that's wrong. You gotta go back and spell it correct. People would screenshot me when I misspelled a word. And it didn't happen a whole lot because I proofread, you know what I'm saying? I check myself on a regular basis, but I'm okay with that level of accountability, because that's what it's about. Now I got to have more discipline about, you know what I'm saying, what I care about my message. Because if somebody takes what I'm saying and they can control the narrative and they can do what they want with it, right? So somebody exploited my blind spot. I made a mistake and they took it and ran with it. And it's a very small snapshot, but the things that we do on a micro level is going to happen on a macro level too. So we got to be careful about that, right? Um, what do men need to protect themselves from the most? Themselves. Think about what the word themselves means, right? Internal conflict, ego. Your ego is the undisciplined, childish version of you that's also, as a man, probably the least masculine or the most violent or the most of your ego has the most violent, least trustworthy version of your thinking packaged into a completely different being. That's where I got the concept for the undisciplined mindset. The undisciplined mindset is the ego, because your ego has to be trained. It is a child. It is it is immature. It's the thing that makes you say, man, I could easily, but you don't do it because the discipline mindset kicks in and says, hey, dude, this is not how we do that. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have far more success if you ignore these people versus engaging with them in an unhealthy manner, because that's what they want. You can't give people what they want. You have to make sure that what you want is more important than acknowledging them. So a lot of men destroy themselves because they get so wrapped up into another unhealthy competition, and it's really about that individual. You had a note that was struck so deep in you that you just can't get yourself out of the conflict because you have to win it, you know? And then we got lust, laziness, and finances. All of these things are tied to rule number 5. You know what I'm saying? Like lust is about sexual discipline. Laziness is about rule number 1, which is men should focus on themselves, and discipline men do discipline things. And nobody picks up the phone and calls useless people. So don't be useless. Finances, they speak for themselves. Everybody want to get money and do it the right way. But I think that when we start talking about finances, it should be a very intricate conversation that's led by people that's got real strategy. You know what I'm saying? And then we got paternity fraud. That is a big one. I was a victim of paternity fraud. And there's definitely something that carries with you when it goes down to that, because everybody gets introduced to the worst version of what we expect in the opposite sex in their own way. Some men end up dealing with the police a lot. Some men end up with toxic co-parenting situations, bad marriages, you know what I'm saying? A plethora of things that could impact his psyche and his confidence and his self-worth, you know what I'm saying? But like paternity fraud is where we go back to sexual discipline, right? Get the DNA test. We talk about that all the time. Developing better vetting criteria. So when we're dealing with the opposite sex, that you can kind of anticipate where things could go left, and if it does go left, what type of woman are you with that that is worth working through, and then one that is not, because a lot of this red pill conversation that's been centered on these topics that's been important to men as it pertains to the opposite sex. It kind of gives this vibe that and I think it kind of sends this message to undisciplined men without a lot of experience that um if you move a certain way, you're going to get the adequate response from the opposite sex if that's what you want. And that's that's a gamble. It's a risk, and which means um you're gonna have to have like very, very solid vetting criteria now, because we're so much more overly exposed than we ever have been. Some people don't know the difference between attention and privacy. You know what I'm saying? And and so like when you're dealing with somebody that cares more about um surface level validation, vanity, you're going to deal with people that will take advantage of you. You know what I'm saying? It's just like when they talk about guys that say women are gold diggers, but the same men that say that women are gold diggers, they lead with money. Same women that say that have complaints about men and how they love bomb them and stuff like that. You know, that's because the woman isn't postured correctly. You know what I'm saying? And her thinking. But that's not the conversation that exists the most between men that already know what to avoid and what to look for. You know what I'm saying? When all of this stuff is about blind spots, this stuff is about making stupid decisions, things that fuel the propaganda that continue to plague the conversations that pretty much end up turning a lot of men into bitches. You know what I'm saying? Don't know how to have respectful communication. Masculine men do not lead with disrespect. We don't insult each other. That's so unnecessary, man. Like, what are we on here doing? You know what I'm saying? Over a period of time. The the people that's only consuming content and only criticizing it and not adding any value, don't want to come on camera. We we need to get past those people. You know what I'm saying? And male or female, we got to cancel people based on their behavior. Like because we're living in times where it's really easy to slander a man. It's really easy. And it keeps coming back to the fact that I say we don't have any allies. This whole list captures exactly what I was saying about not having any allies. Like all of these things are the pitfalls that men need to be aware of, because if we're going to say nobody's coming to save you, then we need to be honest about the things that work against us. If at some point, if you're in a constant conflict with people that don't respect you, are you saying that you don't have the power to get what you want? Are you saying that your approval for what you're after goes through the argument of the person that doesn't matter, whose opinion doesn't matter? They probably matter to somebody, you know? How are men supposed to move forward if we can't have baseline understanding on things that really would serve your own kids in a certain type of way, right? Why do we go against that? Why are men in conflict with each other for no reason? And I'm asking that question rhetorically because some of you guys got to get off the island too. Everybody can't go, and sometimes you're trying to load the boats up with people that's gonna just shoot holes in the boat. So who are we supposed to listen to at some point, right? So when we're having these exchanges on the internet, bro, you really giving away the best part of your brain to someone that doesn't deserve it. You're shortening your lifespan, and you're putting their priorities ahead of yours because they have control of you, bro. Like, I talk a lot when we bring up slavery, right? When people bring up race issues, I think race issues factor into this in some degree too, because eventually you're going to end up talking to somebody that defaults to race every single time. And they'll say something like, well, you don't talk to white people like that, or you don't talk to the Chinese, the Mexicans, whatever else. Well, I'm not part of those groups of people. And that still doesn't absolve us from being responsible for making our image better. Then it's not their responsibility to make our image better. So why do we have to care what they say? Especially if they aren't in support of what we're doing. Especially when you got a product to back up what you're saying, you know. Got to get out of conflicts with people that just got a rebuttal just because they want to, you know what I'm saying? Just because they got to have something to say. It's not sustainable, you know what I'm saying, to be in constant, you know what I'm saying, conflict with people that just simply don't care and don't want to get behind what you care about. The things that we're working on now are centered on legacy, equity, and that happens whether you are living righteously or self-righteously. If you're living in a self-righteous manner, most of your decisions are going to be selfish, and typically when you live a life making selfish decisions, you end up hurting a lot of people, and your legacy is associated with the people that you hurt. You know what I'm saying? Because legacy is about impact. It ain't about how many kids you make, none of this stuff. Because if you out here impregnating women with a bunch of bums, you know, and you putting pookies in the coochies, then you got just as much liability out here in the world as they do, because you half of the problem. You know what I'm saying? So you got to get in the lane that makes sense for you know what I'm saying, whatever your argument is. We have to do better. Even if we're doing great, we still have to do better because we're behind in a lot of ways. Very much behind. And that should be something easy for us to agree with. I don't think that's a difficult thing, you know what I'm saying, to take into account. So in all seriousness, what would you like to see men do better at with each other? You know, get in the comments and see if it's something else that wasn't on that list. Matter of fact, I pull the list back up again. You know what I'm saying? What is something that we could be doing better? You know,
my grandma says the only two things in life that you worry about, whether you're healthy or whether you're sick. If you're healthy, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you're sick, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're gonna get better, whether you're gonna get worse. You get better, You ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you get worse, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're gonna live, whether you're gonna die. If you live, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you die, you got two things. Whether you're going to heaven, whether you're going to hell. If you go to heaven, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you go to hell, you got two things to worry about. Original or extra crispy? That's the
So, shout out to Ralph Wilson. He said, if a man protects himself from himself, he will find success and peace. Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. Because you're your own worst enemy. Your ego. Your ego is your own worst enemy, man. Like, the enemy from within is going to do you dirty every motherfucking time. Every time. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, every time you made a bad decision and you got time to look back on it, you be like, man, I could have made a better choice. I should have did this. I shouldn't have did that. I shouldn't have sent that text message. I shouldn't have, you know what I'm saying? I should have waited a little bit longer. I should have went to bed. You know what I'm saying? And that's a way that you got to protect yourself from yourself sometimes, you know, and sometimes removing yourself is the best medicine, because if you're there, if you're not there, they can't blame you. If you are there, they're going to find a way to make you responsible and make you liable. So a man has to determine if he goes into a certain space where people are, what's the probability of him coming out unscathed? You know what I'm saying? Depending on the topic. Well, that probability goes up or down depending on how much involvement you have in it. If you just want to be a spectator, yeah, you probably got better chances of not having to deal with nobody in a negative way. You know what I'm saying? But if you can't discern that from the get-go, if you come into it with like trying to make people fold to your expectations, you're going to get some outcomes that you're probably not ready to deal with. You're going to be in over your head quite quickly, you know? So shout out to Ralph Wilson. Hey, what's up, my man, Antonio Billings? Man, ego gets you every time. Ego gets you every time. Yep. And the ego part of like your previous comment, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, this is what the ego says in hindsight. The ego says that in hindsight, man. Like when you think about it, when you say, like I said, should, everything on the other side of that word is abracadabra. And what it implies is if I say Antonio should do this, if I do this, Antonio might not even be thinking about anything that I'm saying. He don't care about my intent. It don't matter. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. And then I'm the one over here disappointed because I was thinking with my ego, you know, and it's mild and it slides into the conversation and the thought pattern so effortlessly. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you're feeling good and that's when you're vulnerable. Anytime you feeling good, you're vulnerable, man. And it's almost like difficult to celebrate wins. I know some people get caught up in celebrating wins. And I think they should be acknowledged. Success should definitely be acknowledged. But I don't think it should be dwelled on. You know what I'm saying? I think that if you go into something being very intentional, you shouldn't be shocked when you get positive results. If you intended and aimed at getting positive results, you shouldn't even be, I wouldn't be surprised at success if I intended to go do something successful. Now, if you get lucky with something, that's different. Getting lucky with something, yeah, have an overwhelming moment. If you get lucky, got it. But in my opinion, success is about sustained and linear, predictable outcomes based on your effort. If you don't put the effort in, if you put the effort in, you ain't shocked. You know, you're not shocked. It doesn't mean you're unappreciative or none of that. You know what I'm saying? But like, I think people chase happiness, and when they chase happiness too much, they get disappointed when it doesn't pan out the way they want to. But chasing happiness is like, it's like chasing the first time you got high. You know what I'm saying? The first time you I don't know, did something that was that produced that high level of dopamine that just took you to another version of yourself and took you out of your body, so to speak. You know, and we have to, as men, we could be, we need to be grateful and appreciative as things go. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, like, you grew up, if you grew up with old people that was like, you asked them how they was doing, they say they was blessed. They said, I woke up to see another day, and they thank the Lord. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of power in just when you hear that, regardless of how you feel about religion. That is a person that is thankful, you know what I'm saying, that they got another chance to chisel away at their ultimate goal, or make up for what errors they had previously. Because some things you can't come back from, but the things that you can come back from, you can apologize for those. You know what I'm saying? Because when we're trying to, like, network and build things together, we're gonna make some mistakes because we're doing something that nobody has ever done, or when we weren't privy to it around other people to see what it took to put together, what I'm saying, something valuable that's respectful, and it withstands criticism, because criticism is part of it when you're doing anything that's creative, and we have to figure out, where do we want that foundation to begin, and how are we going to do that if we got men calling each other simps, we got men that's still looking for like short-term fulfillment, you know what I'm saying? So my man Garrett says, here we go. What do men need to protect themselves from? Women. I definitely believe that that's the truth. I think men need to protect themselves from undisciplined women. I'm gonna elaborate on that a little bit more, because the truth is, the men that can resonate with this, understand this. You picked her. Yep, you picked her. If she do something great, you get credit for it. She do something terrible, you take credit for it too. If we could tell women that you picked him, men have the same obligation as well. You picked her. And understand this too, when it comes down to women, you only can attract a woman that reflects your level of self-esteem. So if you get a woman that abuses you, exploits you, verbally assaults you, there's something in your character that's enabling her to do that, that's inspiring her to do that. Now, that part right there still fall on you, man. It's ugly, but it's just the truth. Because if nobody's coming to save men, then we don't get to say who's the problem. It's your selection criteria. What else, Garrett? The more assets you own, the higher your reputation, etc., the more potentially can be taken away. Yeah, absolutely. That's why, like, when we looking at all of this stuff dealing with Diddy, right? Diddy, Cassie, Tory Lanez, you name it. All of these dudes, what's the common thread in all of these dudes' situations right now, in your opinion, Garrett? I want to work through this. Anybody else that's watching too, you can chime in. What's the common thread between Tory Lanez, Diddy, R. Kelly, Shannon Sharp, and even Bill Cosby? You know what I'm saying? I throw him in there. What's the common thread between all those men in their situations, and why are we talking about them? I'll wait for you guys to respond. What is it? Because you think it's celebrity status? Okay. Antonio says it's celebrity status. What else? Gary, what do you think the commonality is between all those men? Tory Lanez, Diddy, R. Kelly, Bill Cosby. What's the common thread between all of those guys and why we're talking about them? What do we got? Complacency. Okay. All right. What we got? I'm not up on that, but Shannon Sharp was in a consensual relationship, but getting with hold up, yeah, but getting with an OnlyFans makes him a damn fool. Yep. Complacency. Yep. Yeah, that's in there too. Celebrity status. Yep. I'm gonna leave this up on the screen for a second because I'm going to tell you from my point of view what's got them in this situation. Some of y'all follow my content, man. You're gonna learn it. Come on, here it is. The common thread between Tory Lanez, Diddy, Bill Cosby, Shannon Sharp, R. Kelly, and any other man that fits into that same situation is not just celebrity status, is poor sexual discipline. Because all of those men chose to associate with those women. And you see how it's panning out. You got to exercise sexual discipline. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's consensual, because the risk is just too high. And I keep bringing this up, and I will always bring it up because we get the blame. We don't get credit. You got to think about it, man. Successful men are going to get blamed. When successful men deserve to be acknowledged for getting credit for something, they get picked apart. You see that even in your everyday life as a man, and you probably not. Most men ain't famous, right? Most men are not popular, but most men are responsible for other people in some kind of way, especially if they got a family, right? So when you're in charge, you get the most blame. So that's why I say when men are arguing with women, are you saying that the women in charge? Because if you're blaming them for everything, you're already saying that they're in charge. Where's your power? Your power is in your attention and not giving it to people that you're not responsible for. So most men give away all of their power through poor sexual discipline. Like literally, think about it, right? If rule number one is men focusing on themselves. All right, I'm gonna pull up that banner real quick. We're gonna run right through this real quick. If rule number one is about men focusing on themselves, personal accountability standards amongst reasonable men without degrading women to improve our society, right? That right there, number one, should take you off the playing field for the wrong women. It should. Abracadabra. This is my abracadabra though, because I know it works. And then rule number two is we don't argue with women. Women have their own issues and so do men. If you can learn to mitigate our issues by observing the conflict management skills of women, then you can see that if you take men out of all of their problems, they're a major problem for each other. So you got to be careful which women you connect to. So you need to observe them and if they have respectful communication with one another. And then if they do, then that's somebody that you could probably, associate yourself with. Rule number three, decentralized leadership requires knowing when to lead and when to follow. You must avoid misrepresenting fellow men. Although we are not perfect, we must have redeeming efforts. See how that goes back to Diddy, Tory Lanez, Shannon Sharp, Bill Cosby, and R. Kelly, is that if you go out there and think about how, this is why I say black men don't have no allies. If you go put yourself out there in a disadvantaged position where men have been trying to reclaim their image and their narrative by avoiding being affiliated with the negative propaganda that has been cultivated around men and the image, especially black men. You gotta figure out what's at risk. And the minute that you go out there and discredit yourself by feeding yourself to the negative propaganda machine, the first thing they're going to do is discredit your ability to, like properly represent black men, specifically black men. That's what I'm talking about right now. Because think about the history that's so fragile and so popular associated with black men. We've always been deemed as over sexualized and everything negative, you know what I'm saying, and toxic. And we like white women. That's the way it's been put out, right? And that's happened since the birth of a nation, since Rosewood, since even in the Green Mile, you name King Kong, you name any type of movie where they can create the damsel in distress, and then the antagonist is going to be an image that's associated with black men, and the damsel in distress is going to always be a white woman with blonde hair. Okay, that's just what it is. Legacy and equity. Rule number 4. We almost done with the rules. And I'm gonna pivot off of these, from time to time too. You need to live a life of service towards your community and others. You must be credible and capable of both being mentoring and being mentored. You must be receptive and coachable. So, like, when I'm talking to people, and if they are committed to disagreeing with what I'm saying, then I immediately shift my focus to those that say, you know what, that makes sense. Because most people don't have the experience that I have, and I don't have the experiences that they have. We don't all attract the same things. Everybody's not going to end up in the same situation. The world ain't perfect. People ain't perfect. Nothing's perfect, right? So, but your intention needs to be perfect. And by your intention need to be perfect, what I mean is that you need to have a disciplined plan before you put it into action, or it's going to unravel very quickly, especially if it pivots off of something negative, something that's just toxic, something that is just unsustainable. You got to figure out how long do you want to stay in that energy, because it will wear down on you. Okay. And then we already talked about rule number 5, but I'm pulling it back up just because of sequence. Okay. But if you can't be coached, and if you come into every situation looking for a negative, that says a lot about you at some point. And again, rule number 5, the sexual discipline piece. You know what I'm saying? You got to be, you establish, you really sustain your credibility and boost your visibility by staying on task and just staying disciplined, man. It sounds corny, but it's just the truth, man. Because most of us don't have grandparents that are still alive that could tell us what they would do, like wherever we get our wisdom from. That's still relative too, because their wisdom might not be applicable in our current times. But that's what I think, and that's what this book is about right here. Go get it. Go get the book. If you don't believe what I'm saying, just read the book and think about. I synthesized a lot of these situations that I just named from those different men and their issues that's being aired out. You lose your privacy when you get caught up in the cheapest situations possible. The cheapest situations possible are generally the most expensive ones to get out of. Okay, Garrett says, I got to partially disagree with one segment to society. A woman is an extension of him in a marriage or commitment. However, but if a woman screws up, more than likely he will bear that's the whole point. The men get all of the blame, bro. We don't have no allies. All of that is exactly why I say we don't have no allies. So, like, yeah, you could partially disagree, but the end item thing, it goes back to the overall point that I'm making. We don't have any allies. You're going to get all of the blame, especially if you have all of the responsibility of making it work, which goes back to why I said you picked her. You picked her. If it takes an L, it's because you didn't vet properly. We're talking about men having authority and having power. And the only way that you can substantiate that is by leading by example, operating in a discipline that you expect others to honor, and and recognizes that there's a risk and reward with every choice that you make, no matter who it is. So, like, truthfully, there's nothing to disagree with here, because ultimately men are only supposed to pay attention to the women that respect them. So if you choose a woman that you think respects you and she ends up not respecting you, then you have a decision to make. You know what I'm saying? Before it goes too far. And that's on you. That being said, that does not absolve her of the knowledge and the responsibility of her mess. Classic case, Adam and Eve. Yeah. The only thing that can hold women accountable is their children and life, and the absence of men. The absence of men is the only thing that can hold women accountable. You understand what I'm saying? Because until women get angry enough at the women that men complain about, nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to change with the women that men are pressed about so much, and that's part of this conversation. If we can take the focus off of the women that don't reflect what we want and focus on making the men better, who's going to fall in line? The women that respect you, because you will actually stand out. You will actually stand out, and women would be more inclined to be around a man and trust a man that cares about discipline, order, and structure. And the ones that only see you focus, he's just trying to control somebody. Those are the ones that you don't want anyway, because they're already operating in scarcity. That's why they think that way. Men got to stop complaining about women that they don't care about. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Let's see here. Women don't vet men. They accept them as they are or not, but men must vet women. Yes, that's it right there. So all that other stuff don't matter, bro. None of that stuff matters. See, that's the ownership part. That's where the power is right there. The same way you vet car insurance, the same way you vet anything that's going to cost you money, you need to do a cost analysis on your emotional investment with the woman that you choose. You picked her. We got to start saying that too, okay? Because if you were in school, if you got kids, right? Or if all of us have been a child at some point, how many times have you heard or seen a teacher deal with the one student that's interrupting the entire class? And because they're not going to stop the learning experience for one person, correct? Well, in effect, when men are focused on the wrong women, you're disrupting your own learning experience, because you got intimate knowledge about the worst version of the woman that you care about, or worse. You don't want to be an expert in the worst woman just because that's your conversation. You just want to use that as like, okay, we don't have to talk about that because we know that they exist. Just like we know races exist, just like we know Karens exist, just like we know any of the worst demographic of behavior exists, regardless of race. We understand what behaviors to avoid, right? And we don't give light to things that should be given light to. I see people there on the fence sometimes, like when a school pew pew situation happens, they're like, some people want to see the shooter, and some people say don't give him any publicity. I see it on both sides. You know what I'm saying? I think we need to see it so we can be like, that's not our issue, or not see it because it might inspire another copycat or something to that effect. But this conversation is about getting men focused on what benefits men. Any attention benefits women. See, shame doesn't stick to women the same way it sticks to men. It just doesn't. And the more you see it, like for instance, Brittany Renner, women that fit that behavior, that's all in the sexual content creator space or whatever they do, they got the social media notoriety off of. If it's involved in a lack of clothing and a lack of sexual discipline, there's a demographic of women that fits that, right? Why do we care about them if we're not attracted to them? Why? Let's see what we got over here. Men are CEOs and we have only one job opening. The more prestigious the firm, the more vicious the competition, and the more extensive the vetting process, even if she's hired after probation time. He still retains the authority and power to discipline and or letting go. Yes, you can't make, you want to live presidential, well, you got to be able to make executive decisions. And the other thing is too, you got to know how to take a loss. An executive decision also involves taking a loss. And that's a lot of men that don't know how to take an L. And because they don't know how to take an L, they would rather be in an endless infinity war with people that don't respect them. You know what I'm saying? So you have to figure out the acceptable loss because there's risk in everything that you do. There's variables you can't control, which goes when I talk about legacy and equity in rule number 4. Yet again, when I say, live a life of service towards your community and, and you got to be credible and capable of both mentoring and being mentored. You must be receptive and coachable. That criteria is not just for you. That's the criteria that you could use to enhance your vetting criteria for a person that you choose to give your life to, you want to protect and provide for, however that comes up. You know what I'm saying? And because everybody's format is different. Let's see here what we got. That being said, all applicants should have read the job description on the door, have prior experience, have recommendations, and be willing to compete against other competitors. I get that. You got it. The principle is right on point. I like it on a surface level for sure because it is screening criteria right away. But I think that this is the criteria that you need to have, and it needs to be you need to use that to make your assessments off of, but you don't have to put it out. You don't have to tell a woman if this is about women is per se is saying, hey, you need to read the job description, job description on the door and have prior experience and have recommendations because, I think at that point you just have to. It depends on the level of connection you have with the person that you're attracted to, the woman that you're attracted to. You know what I'm saying? When it comes down to it, the risk is just too high at this stage without any allies. Nobody has funding that they can just cash you out a check and reset your life like that. You know what I'm saying? As an average everyday guy, the main thing that you need to have is discernment. That's the thing that makes you better overall. That's what separates the people that make good and bad decisions. And we know that because we've all made mistakes. We've all had someone that didn't meet a certain expectation that they set. Because I've been a proponent of saying this. Women live on expectations and men live on experience. If a man just lives his life on expectations, he's a slave to his emotions. He's a slave to his feelings. And he's going to make a lot of emotional choices and he's going to overplay his hand in a lot of ways. Let's see here. That's the beauty of being a well-established firm. Word of mouth gets around. You are correct. Men have no allies. If we have anything close to it, it would be other men. Bingo. Which is why respectful communication is key. Do you think we can vet things better as men through insults only, through unhealthy competition, or do you think we need to establish respectful communication so our trust is valid? So that means, like, Garrett, I would love to be able to defend you in a situation where you're not present, right? But if I'm out here doing messed up things, you probably wouldn't want me to speak for you. Because sometimes the wrong person can speak for you and it can damage your credibility too. Because again, we have no allies. Things are shallow. People don't really get down with folks once they decide who they connected to. You know what I'm saying? Because you start thinking about optics, because pictures go a long way and they live forever. So you got to be careful what you're doing. You have to be. It is vitally important, because it doesn't take much to knock you off the off your off your balance, man. And it just seriously doesn't take much. Think about how quickly the wrong communication with the wrong person can go, regardless of gender. Think about scammers. Think about all of the forex trading people that just hit you up for anything, right? Men will shitting on each other up front, but lower behind each other's backs. Women smile on the front, but stab each other in the back. Yeah, I can agree with that. I think men have a lot more room for redemption with each other once we establish, like, hey, I didn't mean anything by that. I think men have the ability to apologize a lot better and more truthful, because you have to sit back and say, damn, this person actually gave me something that I could use. I need to go apologize. I had plenty of people that used to think, man, I thought Vic just bashed women. Like, no, I don't bash women. I talk about their behavior. And I only talk about their behavior as an example of why men can't behave like women. But there's a lot of men out here that wasn't raised with a father. And so they inherently act like women and they don't even realize it. It's competitive for no reason, argumentative for no reason, always looking for some sort of attention, and they don't even have no solution or nothing about it. They just want to win. They just want to one up the situation. That is not masculine at all. That is as feminine as you can get. You might as well throw a wig on it. So no, men that masculine men are problem solvers. And in order to solve a problem, you can't come in with disrespectful language. We can't be disrespectful towards each other, or else we're no different than the things that we complain about. So we are responsible for that. So, like, women say all the time, men don't hold each other accountable. Yes, we do. We know we do, but we're just not having a conversation in public like we are right now, And we got to be honest about this stuff, man. Like, think about what you want to accomplish, and think about the fact that nobody does anything alone. How far are you going to get to your goal and dream with the way that you communicate with other men? With your, like, think about, are you receptive and are you coachable, right? How much further can you get? What's the ultimate vet? Truth. If someone is willing to tell you the truth when it is inconvenient for them, even if it costs them, yeah. And that, so like, I like that, Garrett. I appreciate your engagement too. What's the ultimate vet? Truth. If someone is willing to tell you the truth when it is convenient for them, even cost them, and risk offending or losing you in order for you to hear it, that's a friend. Absolutely. Friend got cut off. And this is why this conversation is centered on that idea. Now, the truth and the vetting that occurs in that conversation, what are we basing that off of? What rules are you going to use to say, hey, man, look, I think you in violation of a few things, and I think you could do better. I think you slacking over here, and it's causing some friction over there because of that. How are you going to use that? Like, what's the criteria? Is it going to be based on a pet peeve or a policy? Because when I hear like I've seen where women will say, how you gonna hold y'all need to hold men, your friends accountable for being sex crazed guys and stuff like that, right? Well, how do you do that if you don't have any friends that fit that behavior? So the reality is that most men don't have children. So how do I go? Who am I supposed to hold accountable if I don't have friends that fit that? And that same thing applies to women, because like, this is why, like, for the women that's listening, the women that are wives, y'all don't need to be in no conflicts with men. You got a husband. Like there's no value in arguing with men that didn't marry you. So, but that's not the basis of this conversation. The men have to withdraw too, because it's like literally no value in arguing with a woman. Let's see here. First casualty of war is truth. And what is a man's life? Warfare. Yep. If you understand that there is constant conflict waiting on you to show up to participate in, like men can't live life walking through the door of walking out of his door or in any other door, thinking that everybody is excited for him to be there, you know. And that's not, and I don't want to say that in a way where it extinguishes room for surprises and happiness or anything like that. I'm just saying that people show you the highlights. That's what social media does. It shows you the highlights. But beyond the algorithm, reality outside requires you to be respectful in communication. Don't make your present situation worse. It makes you remember that you don't have any allies. The only place where, in my opinion, that I've seen real allies between men is really through military service, or when I've been in the front of an idea and I'm willing to put it out there and get people to buy into it, and it don't cost them any money to understand it. Like giving somebody the ability, the tools they need to just change or tweak a couple things in the way that they think is very beneficial to a lot of people. Because if you can affect a bunch of people at the same time with something that's healthy and it starts showing up, people become more appreciative. And again, remember I said before, being appreciative, gratitude, empathy, all these things come from a disciplined mindset. Because when you got time to think, and if you solved a major issue, you know what I'm saying, with just a tweak here and tweak there, that's invaluable to a lot of men. Like, how many of y'all have been working on like something mechanical, right? And you got a ratchet and you got a socket, and the distance between it, you need an adapter. Well, the information that I try to put out up here is meant to be an adapter to whatever it is that you're already doing. Because when we turn this off, you got your problems, you got your own responsibility, your own obligations, right? I'm just trying to give you an adapter so you can put more torque on the areas that you're trying to target, that you're trying to tighten or you're trying to loosen. That's it. And that's what most men sit back and say, man, if I had known this, or man, if I had known that. That's why the past matters to us so much. And then we'll take that same phraseology about the past of a woman. We put that on a woman, just like we want to know what the history is with a car. We apply everything to something mechanical. And women are here and say, oh, you guys are just objectifying. I don't care. It's not a language that I care for women of. I don't care if they don't like it. It's what men understand. You know what I'm saying? Just like women got their own analogies about how they process men. Men need to be able to have their own too. Because if we were if most men understood that the only women that they should focus on is the ones that respect them, they wouldn't have to go into some elaborate explanation and all the time. You would be in a space where your significant other would value your coaching and your teaching because they know it's coming from a respectful place. But for the people that still idolizing and worshiping their emotions and their own traumas and stuff, the minute that you use certain language, they're going to think you're a controlling individual. And the truth is, men don't want to control every single thing. We really want to retire. We really want to retire and kick back and put up, you know what I'm saying, put glasses, fill glasses with whiskey and tell war stories, you know what I'm saying, about what we was trying to do in network and things of that nature. But like, if we got so many men that's so focused on the last woman that did them wrong, the red pill content that they most recently been inspired by, it's going to be very, very difficult to get respectful communication in that, because at some given point in time, somebody's not going to want to hear it. Women are born on the mountaintop, but men are born in the valley. Women just have to play their cards right, or they have a long way to fall. But men, how willing are you to climb up out of the pit? Yep, bro. Life in general is just a climb. I saw this on a meme or some content one day, but like, you don't, that success that people see on the highlight reels that they see on social media, you don't know how old the video clip is on that stuff, man. You don't know if that thing was 2-3 years old. You don't know the amount of sleep lost, the work that was put in, the groundwork, or any of that. You don't know. But beyond the algorithm, as the show is called, that person was up. That person was networking. That person was collaborating. And you're not going to get to where you're going to go without other people. And the level of respect in your communication is going to determine that too. We're all one conversation away from changing our complete trajectory. You know what I'm saying? Good, bad, and different. So while you're trying to climb out of the pit, you better develop some better communication skills going forward. You're going to have to, you know what I'm saying? Because the way social media, whatever platform you use the most, people communicate differently. On TikTok, they talk differently and they got different filters over there. IG, we already know that place is like from things I've seen, like a sexual zoo. YouTube is, you know what I'm saying, where a lot of people come to get refined information and follow, you know what I'm saying, the healthiest version of whatever content gets produced by whatever's choice content creator. Facebook, I get most of my stuff comes from writing. So my engagement is different on Facebook than it is on the other platforms, because what I say on Facebook is cool. But I take what I say on Facebook or IG, I always end up, you know what I'm saying, getting banned of some sort, getting some kind of restriction. So life is the same way. You might bump into somebody that might be in effect a different an analogy is a social media platform, right? Let's just say you talk to a chick and she cares more about what's going on TikTok than any other platform. Her level of sensitivity and receptiveness might be completely different than somebody that's just on IG, because the people on IG like to take pictures and do videos, and you know what I'm saying, and you know, I like news and I like information. So I see what people post. I follow certain news sources. So, you know, your algorithm reflects what you're interested in. So the minute that you try to say something that's enlightening, and you got to make sure you got the right audience, you know what I'm saying? So while you're climbing out of the pit, you got to recognize these things as you go. Your audience is going to change. If you're doing better, it's going to have to change for you to get to where you're supposed to go. That's the only way that you're going to get what you're supposed to have, especially if you believe in the vision that you've already committed to, you know? So, yep. And if you don't, you will perish quickly. Yep. Yep. Clawing out of the pit is between ages 18 to 30 for men. I agree with that, because I said this before, men between those ages right there, you experience a period without acknowledgement, without success, because you're still doing the work. And within that, there's a level of abstinence from respect that you go through. Okay. Abstinence from respect is very, very important to understand here, because I would normally say abstinence in general, because there's sexual abstinence in that too. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're 18 and the women in your age group are attracted to men that's in the 30s, it's going, you're gonna spend way more time around guys, you know what I'm saying, than women, unless you got like that extra factor that attracts women in droves, whatever, right? And you got to deal with that. Some people got delayed gratification in that too, you know. So, but those same women that get that type of attention early, they experience the abstinence on the backside. And a man, it takes time for him to mature and develop into someone that can be trusted in general, whether he's in a relationship or not, because the only understanding that you got about the world is based on your emotions after you leave your parents' house and with whatever they trained you with. Because some men ain't getting no type of training. There's a lot of men that's been raised by women, so they go through a lot of ups and downs with the opposite sex in a much different manner than men that were raised with their fathers. And especially if their fathers were husbands. You know what I'm saying? So that's a different role. You know what I'm saying? And then certain tweaks, like if the father's in or out of the house, if you had a stepfather that didn't like you, or a stepfather that actually liked you, but you didn't like him, and it took you years before you could respect what he was trying to do. On so like ultimately, respectful communication changes all of that. It changes like the credibility that you have. You know what I'm saying? As you move forward. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The son husbands, that definitely those guys right there, you're gonna always get the most resistance from that group of men. The son husband's gonna always give you the most resistance. And for whatever reason. Now there's some that recognized how they was raised and they're like, man, you've been shielded from a bunch of information. The red pill community is where the son husbands live. They like, you got to think about it, right? If you grow up with your dad and he give you all of this information that we're talking about now in a respectful way, in his own style, and he prepares you for what to pay attention to and what to avoid, you probably don't need the red pill community. You know what I'm saying? That's what your pops was there for. Yep. Or the queen daughter. Yep. Come on, man. Like all of this stuff right here is ego. When you start dealing with different demographics and age, you're talking about the maturity of the ego that fits into that demographic, because there's always a mature version in every age group. Because I've been around some guys that was 10, 15 years younger than me that could teach me something, and I'd be willing to listen to them and learn from them, that men older than me would never listen. And part of this respectful communication conversation between men stems from the fact that there's a lot of men that's older than me that we grew up with that had a certain level of limitation, certain level of sexual discipline, and their accountability overall was more amplified, was less discussed. Was less discussed because a lot of those guys was raised by grandmamas. They had families full of women, you know what I'm saying, and all of that. And shout out to my man Antonio, iron sharpens iron for sure. You know what I'm saying? And that's what all of this is about overall, man. Yep. And red pill has been twisted and distorted from truth mindset to extreme complaint fest. Yes, because those men that's raised by women are in constant competition with each other and going back and forth, and it's unhelpful. Those guys are going to be in constant competition with each other, just like women. I'm telling you, those guys are trauma bonding with other men. Arguments between men is trauma bonding. It's feminine, and it has no purpose, no value. It does not impact us the way we would like for it to. If we could turn the conflicts into healthy outcomes, then I wouldn't have nothing to talk about. But most of you guys watch sports? How many teams have you seen that argue with each other actually win championships? Outside of, I know that there's always some sort of inner conflict between, guys that are dogs and they just trying to compete, right? But overall, like most times you're going to have more compliance than conflict in order to win as a team. Yeah, manosphere can be a great thing, but advise with caution. Yeah, because if you come in looking for self-righteous outcomes, then whatever you think that you're going to achieve with that in the manosphere, You're either going to be a part of somebody, like, because men get pandered to also. There's a lot of prosperity preachers in the red pill space because they just telling guys to just go to the gym. And yeah, they talk about character. I've seen enough. I know it's well intended, but what happens is that when it becomes a popularity contest, anybody can get the mic, and anybody with a following can say anything from anywhere. You don't even so like if that's the case, that means imagine someone that's got a lot of money and they want to come in and they say, "Hey, I want to put 100 million behind what you're doing, but I need you to stay away from these topics and I need you to talk about these topics." And they completely altered your trajectory because of the amount of money that they now have equity in your outcome. You know what I'm saying? You have to make sure that your narrative individually is not up for adjustment, it's not up for misinterpretation. Is it has to be. So if you can't do that at a micro level before you experience the success, you're going to be easily manipulated as you go forward. And that's what you see a lot of in the manosphere content space as it's changing. Some people, like, I think Donovan Sharp, I saw something on him where, he had got up to like 175,000 subscribers or something like that. Then it just kind of fell dead on his face. That's not any slight, but once people start digging into his past and what he was saying, and it was just a lot of surface regurgitated red pill opinions from other people that's also red pill content creators, and then people start scrutinizing and criticizing and critiquing and like, oh, this is as far as they can go. But we got to be able to talk about something that's fluid and ever changing, and that's about how we deal with the problems that interest me in the most. And it can't be women all the time. We have to take women out of it. We have to not take women out of it. We have to streamline the conversation where women factor into it. They have to be a variable, but they are not the goal. They are not the goal. The goal is the best version of you. And that's exactly what accountable masculinity is about. Like, it's about identifying the disciplined man in you. You know what I'm saying? That a lot of the things that may or may not hit for what I'm saying, they won't be materialized until you start practicing it and observing your environment and really saying, you know what, I don't have to participate in this. Because a lot of the things that we get caught up in is really volunteer. I get there's some things that just randomly can happen. I get that. That's just called life. Life ain't about being happy for men, unfortunately. That's a utopian idea. That's what the movies are for. You ever notice most movies are scripted and built off of an exception and an imagination that becomes something that you can see in imagery, and you're like, and it's an escape. Why do people go to the movies to go see superhero films? Because you getting immersed in somebody else's creative, imagination. But if you go see a film that's based on something that actually happened, or it's just it's based on a true story, or an interpretation or an interpolation, you can be like, you're not that interested, because it's going to take a lot for somebody to impress you. You know what I'm saying? And next thing you know, you're going to be picking apart the CGI. You're going to be picking apart like Fast and Furious, right? Driving a hypercar up the side of the Burj Khalifa, and then thinking that you could jump out of a car onto another car that's moving at a crazy speed without all the other variables. And these cats was driving cars into space, man. That ain't realistic, not from where the franchise started at. It became human superheroes, you know what I'm saying, in space cars. So at some point, it's like, okay, we went from it being entertaining to just like, yo, this is just ridiculous, right? That's what respectful communication is, right? Eventually, you're going to find yourself in a space with disrespectful communication, and you have to recognize it and take yourself out of it, because nothing positive comes from disrespectful communication unless you got some kind of product or service that can transmute that into something that could make money and help other people. Let's see here. What we got? Garrett on it. That people like Myron have kernels of truth spread sparsely. The problem is the red pill community is trying to apply one size fit all solution. Get rich, get buff, reputation. You should be set. Right? They said that doesn't help the majority of the population. To solve problems, we must help the larger number, not the minority. Yep. Maybe only a select few needed that info, not the average man. That's correct. And I like the fact that you said not the average man, because somebody's listening and they're going to say that they find that maybe a little bit discriminatory. But average is relative. Average is relative to what you impact every day, because you might view yourself in a self-confidence level as being above average, right? But the only thing that can audit whether or not you're above average is what is your impact on the world? What's your value to other people? And you balance that with what you say you are and your self-confidence, you're gonna find out if it's true or not. You know what I'm saying? Because all you got to reflect for your value is your outcomes. Outcomes are the only thing that matters, man. Period. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what you feel. What do your outcomes say? If so like going back to one of those conversations that you said, like telling the guy the truth, right? And like going back to this one right here. What's the ultimate vet? Truth. Okay. Outcomes are the only thing that matters. So if we're gonna vet the men that we should be in communication with and that we should trust, we have to take into consideration what decisions are they making within their own individual lives, right? If they value, could you think you could trust someone that has or how far do you think you could trust someone that's always caught up in a situation that impacts their availability? Why would a job hire someone that, or how long would a job keep someone that they hired if the availability becomes complicated? Because that's what gets me in off the island, the lack of availability, right? Just showing up and bringing your talent, that's a plus. We want you to do that because we want you to be useful. That's necessary. But when you starting to be inconsistent, then nobody can depend on you. You know what I'm saying? So if average, by definition or by understanding average, is somebody that generally plays by the rules and does what they can handle and doesn't overdo it, right? But if they want to lead something, you can't lead anything while being average. So people have a choice, and which goes back into like rule number 3, decentralized leadership, knowing when to lead and when to follow. Like there's a part of your life where you're just average. And then there's a part of your life where if you want success, you have to choose to elevate and choose not to be average. You have to choose to be intentional. Being intentional about stuff ain't average. Successful people aren't average. They may be able to account for the average person, but they themselves are not average. And what makes you average is your mindset. And either disciplined or undisciplined. But see, there's a big difference in making an undisciplined decision and just being wrong. There's a big difference. You know what I'm saying? And when you think about the outcomes, the only thing that matters is the outcome. So if you have had job history where you in and out of jobs every 6 to 8 months, would you call that person average? Or are they below average individual? You know what I'm saying? We have to really, really put that in the right box. Let's see. Everyone wants to lead, but few understand that leadership requires sacrifice and demands a servant mindset. If someone wants to lead for power and authority's sake, They're in it for the wrong reasons. Yep. And that's why I took a lot of time. I took a lot of time to write this book because of that very reason, man. Because we all want to be successful, but for what reasons do we want to be successful? What are we willing to compromise, sacrifice, and what's important? Who's important to us? Because sometimes people will sacrifice relationships with people that they shouldn't sacrifice relationships with. And it looks good when it gets on the other side, but then it's the worst decision that they ever made. You know what I'm saying? We always think the grass is greener on the other side. That's a cliche, but typically when people are motivated by material outcomes, then their decision making is going to reflect that too. And their relationships are going to reflect that. That's why even when you're leaving, like for those of you that never left home, the hardest separation you have to break is the one probably with your families because you feel some kind of need to be there. But I'll tell you, if you gotta, and when I say leave home, not just your parents' house, I'm talking about your zip code, the county, wherever you are, you know, you need to go be a nomad. You need to go feel what it is to be out here and only responsible for your decision making. You know what I'm saying? But because while you're sitting around saying nobody's coming to save you, but if you're still around your family, that's going to come to a head at some point. I'm not saying that it doesn't work for everybody. I'm just saying that you need to experience life as a nomad at some point. Men must be asked, why do you want to lead a woman? Is it to provide, guide, etc., or to rule over her? Um, I get that. I believe the way I would feel that, right? I think on this side, what I try to cultivate with my audience is that these are implied things, right? And a disciplined man should already have this worked out. I shouldn't even be at this stage. I feel like I could help me maybe streamline what their plan is for the woman that they already have. But ultimately, a man has to decide if he wants to be a husband in that situation. Like, do you just want a woman or do you want to be a husband? Do you just want female companionship or do you want to be a husband? Um, do you want a woman because you really just want kids? There's a lot of men that just want kids. And I think you don't have to ask those questions about do you want to lead a woman or whatever. Typically speaking, when I see that type of language, it's it I wouldn't say it's triggering, not for me anyway, but it just starts a whole different conversation that goes that invites the wrong people into it. Because you got to think about everybody's education level isn't the same. Not everybody can process words without wrapping their traumatic situations around it. And if you're talking to the wrong person, the conversation is going to go off the rails. You're going to have to stop and explain every single thing because you're going to trigger somebody that only listens to respond. So you want to I think you want to be in connection with a woman that, number one, values being of service to the relationship, that values and envisions herself being uh, a catalyst to part of being a catalyst to a man's success and well-being for his mental health too, not being a burden. You want to get you a woman that doesn't take away from what you do, doesn't stop you from scoring. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to even give energy to women that you have to explain these implied tasks. Like this is the stuff that's in the job description already that you keep to yourself. You're just supposed to be able to listen to her, watch the way she moves, and assess if she's helpful for you or not. Is it what level of emotional maintenance is going to come with this connection? You know what I'm saying? So the we got to learn how to not say everything. You know what I'm saying? We got to learn how to let their behavior um make the decisions for us. They're telling you everything. If she moving righteous, you won't have to ask that question. But if she ain't moving righteous, she's answering that question for you. And you don't have to bring it up. But if you have to bring it up, you're already at a deficit. Yeah, men must ask themselves exactly. Yeah, I like that. That's exactly what I'm talking about right there, Garrett. That's respectful communication, right? You can ask yourself that. You can ask yourself that. I just want to challenge men to refine their communication. You know what I'm saying? So they don't have to overthink. They don't have to over explain. They don't have to give caveats. And for those that don't know what a caveat is, you have to preface everything. I'm not talking about all women. I'm not talking about all men. I'm talking about that. We got to get past that. That wastes so much time. It wastes so much time, man. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Exactly. And those men prefer asking themselves before dealing with a woman less issues that way. Yeah. You just got to really look at the behavior, man. And the other thing is too, you have to read the signs. You have to read the room. Everybody's not going to be attracted to you just because they fit something that you think that they would look good in. You got to grade people based on it. Nobody deserves to be treated better than their behavior. Nobody. Not your parents, not your kid, definitely not your kids if you got them. You don't reward bad behavior. So people that behave poorly and you don't know them, don't acknowledge them. Don't give them no airtime. Wait for them to speak to you. Speak when spoken to. And then respectfully, allow them to reveal themselves. Let them talk. They'll answer every question. If you got your own built-in criteria and you know what to look for, because every human being has a profile. Like, they don't like to talk about stereotypes, but that's what it is, man. We don't have nothing else to go off of until you have an equitable exchange in a conversation and through respectful communication, because you're going to be able to tell if they're a chameleon or not, if you know what to look for. And you don't have to challenge and call them out. All you have to do is let them call themselves out and keep it pushing. Everybody knows what their place is with somebody based on the way that you, the frequency of communication. No one deserves anything unless we go scriptural, but good works should be met with good works. We are called to be benevolent. Yep. And that's why I say you need to work for those. That's why I say you need to live a life of service towards your community. Okay. People only deserve what they earn. Simple. Because no one deserves just anything, because that's delusional. That's the hocus pocus. That's the abracadabra. You know what I'm saying? When you say should, everything on the other side of the word should is tied to what you think you deserve. And that's why it's dangerous. So I like the fact that you brought up no one deserves anything. You know what I'm saying? These things are, these terms are very implied and they make sense. But we have to do analysis on the words that we choose to communicate with, because they mean something different when the person is depending on you. When they're depending on you, everything you say is law. So you got to respect your own authority and understand that the person you're talking to, this is why I say men have to be in charge of their whole situation. Okay. Part of what I'm talking about involves this right here. If you've chosen correctly and you realize that the woman that you are committing yourself to is an ally, right? Then she should also know that every time that you give some form of correction or suggestion or something, it's not competition. It's auditing. You know what I'm saying? And so she shouldn't get defensive. But it's your job to communicate in a consistent enough manner so that she doesn't submit to her defensiveness and, trigger her triggered emotions, and vice versa. You have to do that for you, because when she is apt to resist, that shouldn't put you in an unhealthy competition with her when both of y'all are just trying to solve the same problem. Both of you guys have the same agenda. You know what I'm saying? Words and distinctions are important, like you just said, because as the true leader and authority in your relationship, and you have the power, understand something. You are responsible for her. You're responsible for effective communication, which means if she misinterprets something, then you miscommunicated it. And if there's a pattern where you've given clear and concise communication and it's been intentionally manipulated because that person wants what they want regardless of what you said, get them off the island. Simple as that. But until you establish, respectful communication, you're going to always be in a position of where you negotiate. Okay. That's important to note. I want to get ready to close up shop. So I want to recap before we get up out of here. Okay. What do men need to protect themselves from? People brought up police, propaganda, stupid decisions, taking the blame, the government, exploiting of blind spots, themselves, lust, laziness, finances, and paternity fraud. And the title itself, what men need to protect themselves from the most, because nobody is obligated to protect you. The only allies that you have are the ones that you create. And if you don't practice respectful communication, then you're likely going to spend a lot of time in conflict, in victim mode, in the survival mode. Respectful communication is the key to creating allies. Okay. Practice respectful communication with men. And by respectful communication, I'm not telling you to make people that don't respect you talk to you better. I'm telling you to avoid the unhealthy competitions with people that are more invested in the problem than the solution. Now, with that being said, I'm getting ready to get out of here. It's been great. Garrett, I appreciate your engagement. Antonio, I appreciate your engagement. Everybody else that's watching, it's going to catch the replay later. I greatly appreciate you guys' participation and taking the conversation seriously. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube, thanks for the other communication. Facebook viewers, Kick, and who's over there? What is that? Twitch. Thank you guys for always supporting the content. Like, share, and subscribe. Go get the book, Accountable Masculinity. Search it up on Amazon or inbox me directly and see about getting your price for your autographed copy. With that being said, I'm out. This has been another episode of Beyond the Algorithm.